This is Chris with Phoenix Gaming. We're going to do a recap of my first competitive game from our ITC ranked league. So this is my round 1 recap. Dark Eldar versus Ultramarines. Again, thank you everybody. The community is growing, the Discord channel is growing, the Facebook community continues to grow. The subscribers are continuing to grow. Everything is getting bigger, and I appreciate it. That is in large part because of you, the community, and I appreciate it. I'm going to shout out militarygamingcommand.org again. Great group of guys, great group of veterans that just want, and ladies, sorry, and just a great group of human beings that want to help support other human beings that were service members and are either injured, sick, suffering from PTSD, whatever. Again, visit the website, check it out. It's super cool. Thank you for checking that out. Thanks again. And one thing I did want to say, if you are a subscriber, you may have noticed that there was a video up yesterday for a brief period of time. It detailed some rumors swirling about the upcoming edition, 10th edition. I have no opinions on that. I have no comments on that. I had to take the video down. I violated my agreement with Games Workshop. That was my fault. I knew I was violating it. I just honestly forgot when I was making the video that I wasn't allowed to talk about rumors. So I'm sorry if you saw that and didn't get a chance to watch it. Just wanted to let you know why that happened. That was my mistake. No harm, no foul. I didn't get fired or anything. They just said, hey, you got to take that down. Gentle reminder, you're not allowed to talk about rumors. And I was like, oh, yeah, my bad, guys. Sorry. And it immediately came down. So just wanted to address that. Sorry for the subscribers that saw it and then saw that it disappeared. So my round 1 matchup was with a gentleman named Steven. Super nice guy, plays Ultramarines. Our mission was Dath and Zeal. It's on the screen here. It's a control 1 for 4, 2 for 4, and then more for 4. And then the bonus is you get 2 victory points if you control an objective you didn't control, or you control all of the objectives. And then you score 2 points if you destroyed at least one enemy unit within range of an objective marker at the start of your turn. And then in addition to that, like it caps at 3. So those will stack, but they cap at 3. And then OBSEC units have sticky objectives. So this benefited me more than it did Marines, because Marines just got sticky objectives on their troops. So this was a boon for me and didn't benefit him in any way. Our deployment zone was table quarters with a 9-inch no man's land. As you can see, I'm just going to pop some little lines here to kind of show you. So it was this mission, one of these deployment zones, right? And so this was an interesting deployment zone. Again, because I play a very melee-centric style of game, it benefits me more than it does my opponent because he had a very shooty style of game. This was the terrain layout we used. Again, the blue footprints are first floor blocking, ruins, and obscuring. The gray footprints are not first floor blocking, but are obscuring. And then the green footprints are woods, and then the red dots you see are just armor containers. So that was our table, just so everybody knows what it is. We're going to do a brief review of my list. I've already gone over it in stream. I'm not going to dig into it too deep. We'll go do a brief overview of his as well. I had an Archon. He had the Helm of Spite, so I could have a deny on the table, and then if he does deny, you suffer perils. I'm mixed about putting that on the table because, man, if I don't use it, I feel like I've wasted that command point. But then there are games where it comes in handy. Played a player the other day and managed to deny him twice and knocked his wizard down to 1 wound. And he took a wizard-based secondary, so he had to be very careful, right? So I feel like it's better to have it than to not. This was not a game where I needed it. I did take Alliance of Agony, so my Homunculus has the Auto Heal 3, and then my Succubus has the Triptych Whip and Precision Blows or Precise Strikes, whatever it's called. This wasn't a space raid. I did take a unit of Blood Brides. There were 10 of them. They went in the Raider. I took a unit of 10 Trueborn. They went in the Tantalus. I took a unit of regular Cabalites that went in one of the Venoms. I took a 2x5 of Rax, 5 Grotesques. I forgot to put my Incubi on here. The Incubi and Drazar did go in the other Venom. and then a unit of 5 Hellions and a unit of 5 Scourges with Haywire, and then 2 Talos, 1 unit of 2 Talos with the Heat Gun, and then the Tantalus, as I mentioned. For secondaries, I did take Raise the Banners. I scored 13 on it. I did score 14 on Take Them Alive and 11 on Herd the Prey, and I capped my primaries for a total score of 93. I'll kind of break it down a little bit more later here, but that's how my game went. And then my opponent scored 5 on Banners, 3 on Assassinate. He didn't get Grind at all. Grind and Assassinate are kind of a trap with my army, and we'll get into that in a little bit here also. He scored 22 on primaries for a total score of 40. I thought I had compiled his list. I must not have. He did have a chapter master. He had 2 units of 10 intercessors. He had a unit of 3 aggressors, a unit of 3 blade guard. He had this gladiator that dumped like 40 shots. I don't remember what it's called, but it has like some sort of Gatling cannon turret. So that thing was scary. Like genuinely, because of my army, that thing was terrifying. Had that, had a Redemptor, had a Venerable Dreadnought with missiles and las cannons, and he didn't have any Inceptors, which was interesting. He had a Primaris Lieutenant or a Phobos Lieutenant, and that was the bulk of his list. Again, it was a good mix of vehicles and infantry, but it wasn't very mobile. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each turn. I'm not going to break down the whole turn completely, but we will talk about some major misplays and missteps in this game, right? I will try to kind of animate it or draw it out for you just to show you, and we'll just discuss key points, right? So turn 1. I did start here. I'm going to make the deployment zone green for now. It is not going to be perfect. I'm sorry. Boop, boop, boop. And then he started here, right? So those were our deployment zones. He got first turn, and he really surprised me because not only did he deploy fairly aggressively, he also played his first turn very aggressively. He slapped a unit of Phobos here so that he could do his banner, right? He did a banner there. He did a banner there. He brought his Impulsor up, and these are breachable, and so he could have just been moving through them, and he knew that. He just decided to go this route, right? He brought his Impulsor up, dumped his Blade Guard out here, and then put a banner down there. And so that was a very aggressive play. He started walking his Venerable through here. I deployed in a way to really limit what he could shoot. And in fact, he only got to shoot one thing turn 1. I had a Venom that I had deployed here because if I got turn 1, it was behind the line, obviously. But if I got turn 1, I wanted to be able to disembark, move up, fly the Venom up, and then smack him off the objective. That was my goal. All right. So that's what his turn 1 was. He took his tank, the Gladiator, and brought it here. He couldn't quite clear this, and there wasn't really anything out here for him to shoot, so it didn't matter. And then his Redemptor ended up advancing and getting like right here. And then he had his Vanguard vets fly here. He was going to dump them out in the middle, and I was like, bro, those move 12 inches. Back them up. If you don't back them up, I will shoot at them. So don't, like, that is your most mobile unit. And it was. The Vanguard, he had 1 unit of Vanguard vets, and that was his most mobile unit. And had he left them out, I would have definitely dedicated to them because that was the one unit he had that could counter my mobility, right? So that was his first turn. And then I went second. So I'll switch over to red. And my win rate with this army going second is not good. We'll make it orange for me. You know, my win rate with this army going second is about 40%, or at least it was probably 2 weeks ago. I've been able to get a few more games in. I've kind of changed my approach if I go second, and I feel like that's helped. I've put the Tantalus in strategic reserve every game since then, and that's helped a lot too. So We'll see. My go first win rate with this army is really high. It's in the mid to high 60s, but my go second is pretty low. It's about 40, and that includes tournaments and everything. So I got turn. So he did shoot my Venom off the table with his Venerable, I think it was, or no, he had a Predator. That's what it was. He also ran his Predator right here. So he had a Predator and a Venerable. But his Predator had a good line on my Venom. There's like a narrow gap right here, and I had a Venom right there. And he killed it, as he should, right? My Incubi got out, one died, but I was able to get my extra little bit of cheese by getting them here when it died, and he didn't have anything that could really shoot them. Then my turn went, okay? And now we'll switch over to orange. So now what I did for my turn was that Venom was gone, and that's okay. Drazar came up here by himself, and then my Incubi rolled into here to take some cover. I had some Grotesques move up, and then I had my Archon and then my Homunculus both kind of in the same area. And then I had Scourges that were right here, and the Scourges jumped out, and I made sure they were within 6 of the Archon. Because it's a space raid, the Archon gives Scourges reroll hit rolls of 1. So it was pretty good. And that was my turn 1, right? I didn't do a whole lot else. I have Hellions that were just camped right here, just chilling, waiting for that bait. The rest of my turn was spent positioning. I did put a banner here. And then, so because he was so aggressive, it gave me a lot of targets. And because these are infiltrators over here, I wasn't super worried about anything they were going to do to Drazar. I did move my other Venom up with the Venom with the Cabalites in it, came up here. We'll put a V there. And this, I'm going to clear this out so it's not as cluttered, right? So all that Venom did was just dump a bunch of shots. It threw a blaster into this, and that's fine. Again, it was just chip wounds. My Scourge's shot. I think I bracketed the Predator if I remember right, but that was it. It didn't die. But then when the charge phase came, I was able to charge Drazar. And then my Grotesques charged in here, and then my Archon was able to charge into the Apothecary. He had an Apothecary right there. I had to fight the Blade Guard first because they have the potential to do a lot of damage to my Grotesques. So I had to do my damage there in case he wanted to interrupt. And that's also how I knew he wasn't going to overwatch with those infiltrators, because he needed those 2 command points to interrupt, and that's all he had. And it was important for him to make sure he could interrupt if I misplayed. So I fought with the Grotesques. At this point, I'm sitting on a handful I did fire and fade, right? So that my Scourges could jump back in. So that means I was sitting at a couple command points. My Grotesques fought, so they're hitting on 3s, and the faction that I took, it gives them exploding 6s and +1 strength. So they're hitting on 3s, they're wounding on 3s, they're re-rolling 1s, and I just put so many damage on him, like just so many wounds on him through my weight of dice, that he just couldn't make them all. They were all invulns for 2 damage each, and there were only 3 Blade Guard against 5 Grotesques. So they just buckled under that weight. There was nothing he could do. So I killed that. Or I put a few damage on his Apothecary, and then I had a Talos that was able to charge the Impulsor, because the Impulsor actually ended up way up front and didn't do much. Like, I just kind of whiffed. It is what it is. And that's how that turn went, right? But because I was able to take control of that objective and knock him off of it completely outside of his Impulsor and his Apothecary, I was able to take down that banner. Drazar made really quick work of these infiltrators. I was able to knock off that banner. Turn 1 recap. I was able to destroy a unit and control an objective, so I got 3 points for direct assault. I didn't have any banners. And then take them alive. I got 2 points on because I killed 2 units in melee. And then Herd the Prey, he was in 3 table quarters. And he did a good job of denying me Herd the Prey for a good portion of this game. And you will see that. Turn 2 comes up, and now that we're at turn 2, his Vanguard vets jump up, and he puts down another banner. And I don't think that's the wrong play. I just think that's the play he did, right? His Redemptor comes up, and his Gladiator finally gets out. And the only thing they have to shoot are my Talos, right? All my infantry's hidden. The Predator comes around here because I had Drazar sitting back here controlling that objective. And then his Venerable just kind of camps. He's got bricks of intercessors over here, like 2 10-mans. They're massive. At this point, he moves his Chapter Master, his Lieutenant, and his Tech Marine all kind of in this little area. And I told him, hey man, turn 2, Army-wide advance and charge. Just giving you that heads up, right? And he's like, yeah, all right. That was kind of his turn 2 positioning. He did have a banner down here, so he was able to score that one, obviously. He put a second one down, like I said. And then his shooting phase came. He dumped the Predator into Drazar, and Drazar soaked all of it. He had 2 wounds left at the end of it. I still held the objective. And he didn't want to charge because he knew Drazar would just make him pick up that Dreadnought. My Venom that was camped right here soaked this shooting because it was -1 to hit, and he just rolled really poopy on the Venerable. And that was a discussion we had is, hey man, you're spending command points on all these weird things, and that's not a bad thing, because he ended up spending 2 CP to let one of these units of intercessors shoot twice in an effort to kill my Venom, because his goal was to kill it with the Venerable and then use his intercessors to shoot the cab lights on the inside. And that's smart. Like, that is a good play. However, because dice are dice, right? The Venerable kind of shit the bed. What he probably should have done is, instead of spending 2 CP to shoot twice, he should have allocated those 2 CP to make his Venerable either a captain or a lieutenant, because he can do that with Wisdom of the Ancients. And then he doesn't have to worry so much about whether or not he's got bad dice, right? And we did talk about that, because that's where the Venerable whiffed. He rolled like 3 1s or 2 1s for his last cannon shots to hit, and then his missile hit, and then I made the invuln when it came to the saving throw. But he would have probably put even more damage on me had he just made it a captain, right? Or even CP re-rolled one of those hit rolls, rather than just spending the command points to try to kill it with bolter fire, especially when he didn't kill it. Because then this unit of intercessors had Chapter Master rerolls dumped into the Venom. They were hitting on 4s rerolling, but they were wounding on 5s rerolling 1s. So it's one of those where he chipped some damage here and there, but it just wasn't enough. And then the back one was even less efficient because they didn't have full hit rerolls. They only had rerolls of 1. And so it was just like 4s rerolling 1s, then 5s rerolling 1s. And again, like, he knocked the Venom down to 3 wounds, I think it was. And then he was like, well, I got to spend 2 CP to shoot again. And I'm thinking, man, like, why? Because that happens at, you don't have anything else to shoot my Cabalites. So why are we doing this? This is not relevant. But he did it, and he knocked it down to 2 wounds after that. His Redemptor dumped into my Grotesques, and then I think his Gladiator also dumped into my Grotesques, if I remember right. And he killed 2 or 3 of them off rip. So I only had 2 of them left in the middle of the board. They were like here and here on the objective. I might have had 3. Is not super relevant. My Talos were kind of like right here. And he was not wanting anything to do with them. He wanted to get rid of the Grotesques. I think that's probably a smarter play. The Grotesques can be a handful if you leave them unattended. But what ended up happening was he ended up making that charge. That's what it was. So he killed 1 in shooting, made his charge, and killed another 2 in melee, is how that ended up going. Sorry. I don't have notes. I'm going off of memory. I'm doing my best. I apologize. Didn't do anything to the Talos, right? Like, just kind of let them do what they do, which was fine. That ended up working out for my benefit, because then my turn 2 came around. My Succubus came right up here. My Scourges jumped out here. He did move his Impulsor, like he fell some stuff back. He moved his Impulsor here to kind of move block me, and then the Apothecary was like with it so that he could shoot everything. And that was a smart play. Trying to move block me with his Impulsor was a good move. I definitely think that. So my Succubus came straight in, right? Drazar just kind of decided he was going to finish off this tank that was here. So we positioned him to charge. My Venom, the Cablites got out. They put a banner down here. And then the Venom that was here bounced up to soak some Overwatch. So grotesques, I paid so I could fall back and charge. Fell them back. Got them ready to slam into the infiltrators. Succubus came up. I had a unit of racks just making their way up the last couple turns. The other unit of racks just chilled out here. Interestingly, turn 2, his aggressors kind of moved into here. He was really overextended on this side, and then all his hard-hitting infantry was over here, like aggressors. The Blade Guard I got rid of early, but his Vanguard vets had put a banner down, and they were just chilling. So I was like, all right, let's see what we can do over here. Let's see if we can do some work. So my Talos ended up coming over here, shot the Impulsor off the table, and then I got to charge the Apothecary and then pile in and consolidate to tag the Vanguard vets. Got to charge into the Infiltrators, did the Venom first to soak the Overwatch. Succubus actually went into the Redemptor that was in the middle of the board, and I used potent metallotoxins. Wasn't trying to kill it necessarily, just trying to chip a bunch of wounds off of it. My Scourges had already shot at it at that point because I fell back, shot at it, and I think I knocked it down to like 5 or 6 wounds. So I did quite a bit of damage to it with the Scourges. So it was a really productive turn 2, but nothing died yet. But in the fight phase, Drazar took out the Predator as he should. My Venoms went into the Infiltrators. My Grotesques went into the Infiltrators. My Grotesques, they deleted most of those, or Intercessors, sorry. My Grotesque deleted most of the Intercessors. And then homie over here, the Talos, did end up killing the Apothecary. Like I said, he piled in, consolidated, tagged the Vanguard vets. Wasn't able to fight them. They chipped some damage off. The big tank was still sitting there, but again, it didn't have anything to shoot with unless he fell back or shoot at. So that was my turn 2. Sorry about some of the confusion. Like I said, I'm doing this from memory, but this is a pretty good account of what happened. I will make sure I take notes actual on the next league game. So let's go to the recap. So my turn 2 recap. I did have a banner on the board. I scored 2 points for direct assault because I was able to kill a unit within range of an objective marker, if I remember correctly. I might have just taken one. I'd have to go back and look, but I did score 2 points on it. And then I got a big chunk on Take Them Alive because I killed the Apothecary for 3 and I was able to kill 2 other units in melee. So I must have killed that other unit of Intercessors. And it's one of those, like I said, we don't need the exactsies. I just want to touch on the key points, right? My Tantalus, that's what it was. My Tantalus came down turn 2 and also made some charges. And it basically came down here. Didn't make charges, made some shots, right? Rolled some dice, shot some things. But the Tantalus was basically like right here. And I was able to be 9 inches away from everything. Everything's making sense now. Sorry about that. I didn't kill the Redemptor with the Succubus. It fell back, though, so that it was outside of the ability for the Redemptor to fight. And then I was able to just keep things within range of the objective marker so he couldn't control it. Turn 3 comes around. And at this point, turn 3 is usually where, like, I catch traction and really start grinding and hitting the gas. Whereas a lot of players, it's turn 1 and turn 2. Like I said before, I tend to play for turn 3. What'd he do? He had the Venerable here, and he didn't really move it, which it's fair. It wasn't really doing anything, and it didn't really have much it could do. His aggressors kind of poked up, threw some shots at my Talos, because he did fall back with the Chainsword boys. Threw some shots at my Talos, chipped some wounds off, shot it with the Gladiator, and actually ended up killing one. So that was a good play for him. The Redemptor threw some dice. It didn't really do much at this point because it was in its bottom bracket. The Intercessors ended up shooting the rest of the Grotesques off the table. But at this point, it just didn't matter. He didn't have enough on the table because ended up once my turn 3 came, my Hellions bounced up. My one Talos took care of that Gladiator. My Succubus ended up going into like one of his characters over here. My Blood Brides had jumped and was able to slam into his characters. My Raider was kind of floating around in this area. My Tantalus jumped up and was able to just throw shooting dice at things. And at that point, like I said, he just didn't have enough on the table. That was my turn 3, and my turn 3 saw a lot of good scoring. He was still in 3 table quarters, though. I will give that to him. Like his Vanguard vets made a lot of good saves. They stayed in the game. He was able to deny me some Herd the Prey. I did kill 2 character units in melee. I scored another point in banners. I had, like I said, at that point I had 2 banners on the table, so I got 2 points there. But then my turn 4, right? My turn 4 was when the game just kind of went bananas. At that point, was like, oh, I don't have any aggressors. I don't have his Vanguard vets just stayed locked up with my Talos for a couple turns until I was able to get the Tantalus. He charged in, did a couple mortal wounds, and then fought them off the board. The Hellions ended up flying up here to take care of a unit of intercessors. My Blood Brides ended up coming up to take care of a unit here, and my Cabalites ended up shooting off the Venerable. His one assassinate point is actually hilarious. He shot at Drazar with his Venerable, and again, just like really bad dice, I made some saves. Drazar only had 2 wounds left, so I ended up heroically intervening into his Venerable with Drazar because it only had guns, and I'm thinking surely this thing's not going to kill Drazar with some no-rend attacks, right? Thing puts 3 wounds on Drazar, and all 3 saves were ones. And I was just like, all right, man, I guess that's fair. My Incubi also ended up finally joining the fight, turn 3 and turn 4, getting up in here, and we just cleared him out. By the end of turn 4, he had 0 models on the table, which allowed me to just score everything, right? So turn 4, I did put down 2 more banners, so I got 4 points in banners. Not this turn, but the next turn I will. And then take them alive. I ended up getting 14 points on. Herd the Prey, I got 4 points on. We're not going to recap turn 5 because, again, it was just me moving things into position to get my total score. But I did end up, like I said, capping primaries. I ended up with 14 on banners total, is what I think my total was. It might have been 13. Take them alive. I got 14 on, and Herd the Prey ended up getting 11 on. My final score was 93. Overall, Steven was a great dude. We talked about some things that he kind of did poorly, and I let him know, hey man, like you were way too aggressive turn 1. I like your spirit. I like what you're doing there. But when I've got army-wide advance in charge starting turn 2, you don't want to put yourself in a position for me to hit you. You want to put yourself into a position to bait charges and then counter charge. And then the blade guard going to the middle of the table, that was another thing I told him. Like, you weren't wrong necessarily to move to the middle of the board and plant that batter. You were just wrong to do it with your blade guard because he only had 2 dedicated melee units and a Redemptor. So it's one of those where if I can avoid his guns, I'm just going to have my way with him. And that's how that game went. His Gladiator, I think, is a good pick. Like I said, it's the autocannon one. It does like 20 shots or 24 shots, strength 6, -1 damage. So had he been able to position that thing in a way where he got to shoot it, it would have utterly annihilated my army. But because of where he deployed it and how I deployed, I was able to avoid it. It shot me one time, that was it. And it shot me where I wanted it to shoot me. Had he put it on the other side of the table, it could have locked down pretty much that whole lane. But instead, he put his intercessors there to lock down that whole lane. And that is what it is. It's a learning process. We talked about a lot of it after the game. And one of the things we talked about, he said, hey, man, like I've not played against Drukhari at all. And I know before the game, we talked about that. And you gave me a lot of good information. He said, but in my head, I'm thinking, well, I've played against Craft Worlds a lot. This is going to be just like playing against Craft Worlds. He said, and man, it is not. He said, I could not believe how fast your army was and how easily you were able to just move wherever you wanted, however you wanted. He said, I was not ready for that level of just aggressive positioning and just annihilating whole units once they touched me. That's what I was telling him. Is like, no, Drukhari would be like if my whole army was nothing but howling banshees, right? Like, it's a very melee centric army, a lot of advance in charge. The shooting is very lackluster in Drukhari. So it's one of those where I'm trying to play a fairly balanced list, but it is still very melee centric. Like I said, we had that discussion. I'd like to see him do better in the next round. He will get paired up against, another person that ended up losing their first round, and hopefully they'll have a really good game. He's not done a ton of competitive events, so that's also a thing to keep in mind. And it's one of those where I just want to make sure I help him and, keep him in the hobby, keep him coming back. It's one of those where I'm not going to just like, I beat you, you suck, get off my table. I want to make sure we talk about it. We do an after action review and we talk about what could have been done differently. Right. And I even try to do that when I lose. I try to talk to people about, hey, man, like, what do you think I did wrong? So that I can look back on what I could have changed. When I played against Votan, we had that discussion at the tournament, and he and I both agreed that the big mistake I made, and I know I've talked about it, the big mistake I made was I overcommitted to killing his wizard, and it left my army stranded in the middle of the table, and I just picked up way too much. If I'd have just set one unit, even if the wizard wouldn't have died, it would have kept him honest. And he wouldn't have been able to just move up and shoot everything. So that was the big change. So that's just one of the things I try to do when I do games and events, is I just try to talk to my opponent afterward about, hey man, like, here's what I saw, here's what you could have done differently. And sometimes there's nothing you can do. Sometimes it's just like, man, I just had good dice, right? Like part of the reason that Venom didn't die is just because I rolled a lot of good saves. It should have died, but it didn't, and it's a dice game. Was the Venom not dying game breaking? Absolutely not, but it's just a good example of it. So that's going to be it. I hope you guys enjoy this type of video. If you do, leave a comment, let me know. I plan on doing a recap after all of my league games at least. And if you do like that kind of video, I'll try to take some notes when I do tournaments and try to do recaps after tournaments a little bit more in depth like this as well. And I'll try to do a better job of keeping notes when I play games so that I can give you these kinds of recaps. Quick overview of the whole game, though. I think Banners was a solid take for me, but it is very mission and opponent specific. If I'm playing against a shooty army, I'm probably going to take Banners so that I can try to hide and force my opponent to have to come out, especially when coupled with Herd the Prey. It's a good way to kind of sit and hold objectives and score points to force a more turtly opponent to have to break out. Take Them Alive continues to be a standout based on the way I've built this list. I was a little apprehensive going into it because I have so much more Cabal units than I would normally run, and that's only like 2. So, but I continue to be able to score that one pretty consistently in the 10 to 12 point range. So I do like that one. Herd the Prey is solid. I think I've only had 1 or 2 games overall where I haven't scored at least 8 on it, and usually those games are Herd the Prey is a linchpin secondary for me, right? If I don't score at least 8 on it, I guarantee you I'm losing that game, even if everything else is perfect, because it means I'm not killing units and that means I'm losing units, right? So I'm not trading well. Grotesques are definitely worth their points. These are the first few games I've played with Grotesques. Those things are absolutely bonkers with the buffs that I can give them. They're strength 6, toughness 6, 5 attacks, neg 2, 2 damage, and melee. With the 6 up invuln and the 5 up feel no pain. Really, the only change I would probably make is I might put the amp. I forget what it's called. It's a grenade, and you can put it on your homunculus. Or you can put it on anything. But you roll it a hit roll, and if it hits, you just get to advance your power from pain 1 turn. That's solid. The only downside is that it's once per game, and if it misses, you just lose it. Right? It's not guaranteed. And that kind of gives the feel bads. But man, like I said, I have had really good success with Grotesques. Now this is the 3rd straight game and the first competitive game I've played where the Tantalus has been on the table the whole game. And so the second game, I shouldn't say the second game wasn't competitive. It just wasn't a league or tournament game, but it was with a local player who's very, very good. It's just one of those where having it start in strategic reserves every game has been absolutely fine. I have no complaints about it. And I just put my Trueborn in it. I put it in strat reserve, and it comes down. They shoot, and usually they actually like kill something because the Tantalus does 12 shots, strength 8, neg 3, 2 damage. So usually they kill something, and it's pretty good. I like it. That's actually going to be where we wrap this video up. It is a little bit of a longer one, but I hope you guys, like I said, I hope you enjoy this type of content. Hatchlings $1.50, Firebirds $5, Phoenix 10, and Immortals $20. Everybody gets some kind of swag or some kind of early access to videos, something like that. So there are benefits for everybody. Shout out to the Immortals, Captain Too Tall, the real Donnie G, and Lord Wellingstone. Again, you guys are awesome. You've done a great job supporting the community and just being a part of the community, and I appreciate you. Links on the screen and in the description. Feel free to check out any of these things, and you guys have a great day.